Hi guys, and welcome to my review of two of the latest products coming out of Linsol. This time two TRIPOWIN products, the Cencibel and the Rhombus. Um, I decided that it would make sense to make both of them at the same time because they are relatively easy to to review, relatively easy to position, and instead of just doing one and then the other separately, just put them all together and that's it. As usual, my equipment of choice to listen to this was mainly my NX7 with the Shanling UAE3. I also used, and I've been using it quite a bit now lately, the AP90 from J. Kelly, and of course the M15. In terms of what I have in front of us to test or to compare the two of them, obviously three are single DDs because the Cencibel is a single DD, and the other three are hybrids because the Rhombus is a 1+1 hybrid. I'm going to start with the Rhombus because this is going to be the easier one to do. Costing around $75 if I'm not mistaken. Comes in a very basic package, a little bit underwhelming to be honest, especially when you have so many other products at this price range. But anyway, it is what it is. Okay, this is basically the sleeve, the box. It brings a little carrying pouch, some tips, the IMs came over there. So honestly, I mean, I'm not going to say this is good, I'm just going to say that I was expecting more. I was expecting more because obviously of the price, and of course we all know what we can get for similar prices or for even lower costs. So as for the IMs themselves, metal shell, okay, very light. I like the design of the actual faceplate, that's cool. Very light, I mean, very light. Fit reasonably decent. The tips that I'm using actually are the standard tips because they were more than adequate. Honestly, I didn't see any reason to try or to use my usual KB07s, although I did try them with the KB07s in an attempt to see if I could improve a little bit what I was hearing. Cable, very basic cable. Again, a little bit of a disappointment, especially for the price. And in a nutshell, the sound of the Rhombus is a V-shaped sound, but it's very dark. If there is in fact a BA at work here, that BA is working in a very relaxed manner. And I'll be quite honest with you. It didn't impress me because it just is nothing outrageously different or that substantially different from way cheaper hybrids than this is. I mean, I can get the same sort of performance, and please forgive me for saying this, those that are listening, but I get the same kind of performance out of an ST2 or an ST1 from TRN. So what I'm saying with this is it's a very dark sound. It's very closed in. There's nothing particularly out of the normal, let's put it that way, for a budget set that I would immediately compare this with. If I was just listening or taking into account the sound, if by listening to it you don't think that it's an IM that costs this price, and let alone when you do obviously know the price and you think what is available at the same price range. No, there are far superior things, and I've just brought three out for very simple comparisons. I mean, I've got the TA1 Max from TRN. In every aspect far superior to the Rhombus, every aspect, from the bass to the mid bass to the clarity of the mids to the details of the highs. Everything is completely, it's way superior. Another one is what I just recently reviewed, the KZ ZX, the ZS10 Pro X, sorry. Fantastic IM, probably one of the nicest, if not the nicest hybrid that KZ has made up to today, in my opinion. I can only wait to see what they're going to do with a true, let's say, top of the line hybrid from them. But as it is, very nice IM, full fun sounding. It's not offensive, it's not aggressive. You know, all the typical problem areas for KZs are resolved in terms of the sibilance that you usually get at 5K, aggressiveness. The bass is clean, it's textured, it's got decent mids. Very nice. I mean, honestly, very nice. And for the $50 that it costs, I mean, I think I've said it all. And finally, an IM which is a little bit older, but the HAKUGEI MS2, one of the IMs that I've many times recommended as a 1+1 hybrid. Fantastic in terms of overall detail and clarity of sound. Absolutely fantastic. So, I mean, I'm sorry to say, and I wish, and I hope to a certain extent maybe, that this is just not a 100% working. Well, it is working, but I don't know. Look, it is what it is. I just was expecting more. Period. For the price, I honestly thought that this was going to be something special, which it isn't. So, Rhombus, I'm sorry. That's it. As for the Cencibel, now that's a different story. That's a completely different story. Let me just get this out of the way. First of all, the box, large affair. Why? Because it brings a proper case. I'm talking an IM which is $25 cheaper than its brother. Brings a nice big large case. Maybe not the best to carry around in your pocket, but it's big, it's large. Plenty of space inside. Sorry. Plenty of space inside for the tips, for the IM, and for even to put your player and everything. So nice. It's already winning points over its more expensive brother. Okay. In terms of its construction, cable, I'm sorry to say, is again the same cable as the Rhombus. Could be a little bit better, but anyway. Construction, it's a nice little resin shell, very nicely built and put together and finished. Very nice, very nice. Light, very good fit, no issues with fitting, isolation is perfect. And they are, well, I want to take this by parts. First thing, the Cencibel works good and wants to work good with wide bore tips. So if you do get it, keep that in mind. Wide bore tips. That's how this IM really comes alive. Secondly, the driver used in this IM, I know it very well. I know it very well. And when I heard the Cencibel, I immediately recognized the driver. You just, I don't know, you might think I'm, talking nonsense now, but you get to a point where you start recognizing certain things, and I recognized this driver. It sounded familiar to me, and when I graphed it and when I compared it to the driver that I'm talking about, I saw straight away yes. And then when I actually looked into the bore and saw yes, it is the same driver. And what am I saying by that? I'm saying that this particular driver is a driver that has tremendous potential. And in this case here of the Cencibel, it's working, in my opinion, at about, let's say, I'm going to be nice, I'm going to say it's working at about 50% of its capabilities. As it is in its stock format, it's a V-shaped signature, nice emphasis on the sub bass, nice transition to the mid bass. Everything is very nice and clean. And then it's got the usual kind of tuning that was very common during late 2019 and 2020, the double horns and so on and so forth. It is nice. It sounds good. Those peaks obviously can get in your nerves, especially if you amplify it, and if you do give it some power, this IM does come alive even more. But connected just to your phone or to a very simple dongle, it will play very decently already. And I think that was maybe the reason why it was tuned the way that it was tuned and left the way it was. to avoid having to require a more substantial bit of power to really get it to shine. But the truth is, and you know, those that follow me know that how I think and how I am. I couldn't leave it as it was, so I did a little small mod to it, which is all that it needs basically, and it transforms the Cencibel completely. And I really hope that Linso will consider this little alteration that I did. I really do, because if they do consider it, they've got a winner in their hands, honestly. I mean, the layer was a decent enough IEM. It was decently well tuned, maybe a little bit too thin, and perhaps because of that it didn't get the necessary I would say momentum that it required. Okay, this with the mod that I'm talking about is basically a layer that has grown up substantially and has been corrected of its flaws, of its thinness, and given a bit of bass to really come alive and complement the mids and vocals and instruments in a proper way. I did some listening of the Cencibel in its original format, like I said, and I compared it to the IMs that I have in front of me, and I compared it to a few more, but I just decided to keep it to these three, and then I modified it and compared it again to better try and position it. So what do I have here in front of me? Well, I've got the VQEYZ Topaz, I've got the TRIPOWIN, and I've got what is probably now one of the leading IEMs in terms of its overall tuning, the 7Hz Zero. Obviously, very different prices here, very different to the Cencibel itself. I mean, this is $65, this is roughly 70, this is 20, this is about $50. So it would have made sense for me to have brought out the Melee, but the Melee is discontinued. Although I did compare it to the Melee, I did do some listening to the Melee, but I thought the Kai would be perhaps a good enough option, as it is an in-between of the Melee and the Olina. So into the sound. How can I describe the sound? As I just mentioned, in stock format, it's got those peaks and so on, and it basically cannot compete with any of these IEMs. It can at very low volume to a certain extent, but the moment you start giving it a little bit more volume, things just scale in a very awkward manner and it just loses its composure. Now, modified, completely different story. Completely different story. The BQYZ, we know it's got all that nice, lush, warm bass, which I absolutely love, and I think BQYZ did a very good job there. It's a hybrid in the sense that obviously it's got the piezo, but the piezo has been very nicely implemented. Some people even don't even notice that it's there, but if you listen carefully, you do see that it's there. It's just been done in a very smooth, very relaxed manner that it takes away, let's say, that usual piezo presence. Okay, the Kai, very well tuned IEM, a more tuned along the lines of what obviously HBB's preferred sound is. So nice bass, nice controlled mid bass, perfect mids. It's the extension up top that maybe again is a little bit lacking, in the sense that I would personally have liked a little bit more detail. But overall, tonally very correct. It's a nice sounding IEM. My preference is, in this case, irrelevant, but as an IEM by itself, it's a very, very good IEM. Okay, the Zero. Well, the Zero we already know. The Zero absolutely fantastic when it comes to mids and detail. Well, in that aspect, it beats the Kai, and it beats the BQYZ, the Topaz. There's absolutely no contest. Where, of course, the Zero loses out to them is in the bass department. nor it doesn't have the quantity and the fullness of the bass of the BQYZ. It doesn't have as well the speed and impact of the bass of the Kai. What we do have is a sufficient bass to more or less keep up with the rest of the spectrum in the majority of the times, okay? But in its overall context, it's thin compared to these two. How does our little Cencibel modified stand up to all of them? Amazing. I know I might be sounding like I'm, oh wow, Acros is hyping. No, believe me when I say this to you. This I am, as it is in this format that I've got here in front of you. If this is taken further, and if Linsol does do this, they have a winner in their hands. Period. It's as simple as that. They need only, if they want to, touch up on the cable a little bit more to embellish the whole thing a little bit more, and that's that. It is a fantastic IM. From the bass all the way to the mids, all the way to the highs, there's absolutely nothing that it cannot do that doesn't match or exceed any of these three IMs in front of you. Yes, it does not have the overall bass quantity in terms of amount that the BQYZ has, but it's got an equal amount of fullness and engagement to it, matched with the speed of the bass of the Kai. So in terms of bass, it's got the bass that these two has got done. The transition from the mid bass into the mids, in my opinion, has been done nicely. It peaks at around 3K. I'll show you the graphs now in a second. It peaks at around 3K, and then it's got a nice smooth roll off. Again, very nice. There is only with very few artists, female vocals, that I noticed that they are just a little bit too ahead of the rest. But otherwise, everything has been very nicely matched up. Tonally, it's very correct. Male voices are perfect. If there is flaws, because there is obviously flaws, of course there are. I mean, the driver in here is a good driver, but it's not the driver. It's then in ultimate detail retrieval. Although when you compare the graph of this with, for example, the graph of the zero, you might not think that there is a difference there. Yes, ultimately the zero does have a little bit more of detailed retrieval, but keep in mind that is also a product of the fact that it doesn't have the bass that the Cencibel has. So if it maybe had the same bass, it wouldn't be there. Or if this had maybe less bass, it would have the same detailed retrieval as it is there over there. But the difference in terms of detailed retrieval is so minor, okay, that I still feel that it can do what the zero does and exceed. Okay, in terms of its soundstage, perfect, plenty wide. A little bit more height would have been nice, but plenty wide. Very good imaging, very good channel separation. You can get that sensation of 3D, that feeling that you get, for example, on the Olina, where everything is like all over the place. This does it very nicely as well. Macro details also impeccable, and like I just said earlier, tonally and timbre and tonality are spot on in my opinion. Very few occasions that I would point a finger. And obviously, always keeping in mind that this is $50. We must never forget that, okay? So yes, all in all, out of the two IEMs that TRIPOWIN has offered us now, unfortunately, I would have liked to say the same thing about the Rhombus, that it is a good IEM and it's worth it, but no, not really my cup of tea. As for the Cencibel, in its stock format, it is a good IEM. It's fun, but there's potential there for a lot more. And that potential and that opening up of all that hidden talent that it's got is so simple to do that honestly it deserves it. So I would say yes, get this, you will not regret it. All right, anyway guys, as always, thank you for taking time to listen to me rant and talk nonsense about IEMs. I'll be showing you the graphs now next, so you guys can have a little bit of an idea of what I was talking about during my talk here. And I'll post as well the music that I usually listen to, so you guys can have an idea of what I heard while testing these IEMs. Okay, anyway, take care, bye bye. Hi guys, and welcome to the graph section of my review. We start off straight away with the graph of the rhombus, which by itself it doesn't look all that bad. I mean, everything stays within, okay, you can see it's a V-shaped signature. Everything stays within more or less a 10-11 dB barrier. Sub-bass focus, I mean, by looking at this, it doesn't look too bad, but the reality is that when you do listen to it, it sounds very dark, very closed off. Yes, you don't notice any sibilance, which you can see here by the graph also indicating that and there is a nice bass to it and a nice quality bass to it, but it's just very dark. And obviously when you then start doing the comparisons that I did with the IEMs that I used, for example the TRN, the TA1, let's just match it up here, the TA1. You know, looking purely at a graph, you would think, okay, the TA1 doesn't have such a nice graph. I mean, bass seems similar, and listening to it, yes, they do sound similar to a certain extent in the bass, but then it's just the way that things are done in this region here, which the TA1 just completely overshadows and overpowers the rhombus. There's you can feel that there's a BA working on the TA1, while on the rhombus it's if it's there, it's very subdued. Another comparison which I did was with the ZS10 Pro X, which I just recently reviewed. I'm just going to change the color here so that it's more visible. And once again, when we put the graphs together, yes, you do see good similarities in the sense of the bass, very much equal, and even in this whole area, yes, there is similarities. The way they graph, it's kind of they're following each other, but you listen to the rhombus and it's very dark. There's no way that there's this energy there, because the ZS10 again completely overpowers it. And finally, the high Ds. I'm just gonna change again the color of the high Ds so that we can see it better. Okay, and now match it. And the high Ds, you can see straight away why I wreck it. It's got very much a curve that's reminiscent of the HD Sound Heart Mirror, so very neutralish bass, but it's very nicely done, that bass. There's more than ample quality and quantity and everything. And then, nice energy up top, presence and brilliance area, beautifully done. Maybe some might consider it a little bit excessive, but in my opinion, I think it's been very well done. And nice mids, very nice clean mids. You don't even notice this peak here. Well, it's close to 5K, but you don't notice it. Nothing. It is truly a very well tuned IEM, and one that for some reason just didn't get much love. But anyway, that's the rhombus against the high Ds, against the ZX10 Pro X, and against the TRN TA1 Max. And honestly, I was expecting more. I truly was expecting more. Maybe I just got a lemon. And if I did, well, I'll do a new review. But as it is and as it stands, no, not impressed. Let me now just show you the Cencibel, and we start off with the Cencibel in its stock graph. That's the Cencibel. Okay, so you look at it in its stock graph, and you're not going to be impressed. And you're not impressed. You think to yourself, well, how can Acro say that this is actually playing well? It's got all these dips and peaks, and it's going to be equally as dark as the rhombus. And the reality, no, it's completely different. Yes, there is those two peaks that I mentioned, 2.5 and 4.5, and they keep things more or less in check up to a certain degree. But you know, it's when you do the little mod that I've done that the Cencibel comes alive and shows its true colors, and that's the Cencibel with the mod. Let me just balance it out. There we go. So as you can see, a little bit of an increase in the ultimate base, maybe 1 dB, but it's just the way that this whole curve here, this completely changes. And this is a product of not only the wide bore tips, but also the small little mod that I did. And nice smooth progressive pin again, peaking at 3K, smoothly drops, calibrated peak, and then this dip that usually is a good indicator of 3D, of imaging, of soundstage. And yes, it does have very good soundstage. For the sake of comparison, I'm going to put again some of the IMs that I selected. First one off is, I'm going to put straight away the Tri HUB Kai, and there we go. And you can see straight away there's similarities in the way that one is tuned and the other is tuned. You could almost say that this is a melee, but no, it's substantially it's more than different than the melee, especially in the upper registers. In the bass department, they're very equal, but as you can see, basically follows the Kai's bass curve, and then very similar, but it's this detail here, okay, and the extra energy there, which is very well matched with the energy that it has in the bass department. It just makes it a more alive sounding IEM, okay. An oldie from TRIPOWIN, which I mentioned as well in my review, the layer, wasn't badly tuned, as you can see. It just was very thin sounding in the bass department, but it wasn't, this area was actually pretty decent, and you know, the layer was decent when it came to mids and upper mids and so on. So that's the layer for you. Just for the sake of comparison, this is the Olina, the stock Olina, okay, and as you can see, again, some similarities in the bass, although yes, the Cencibel, the modified Cencibel, has got more bass, and the fact it's got more bass does counteract slightly that sensation that the Olina has of being a little bit bright and having that peak there close to 5K. Because of the extra energy that this Cencibel has, you never feel that, and besides never feeling that, you don't have that peak there. So again, just an interesting comparison that I thought I'd drop. And I think I've showed, oh yes, sorry, the Topaz, Topaz, and that's the Topaz for you. The Topaz, as you can see, seems to have less space, but don't forget it's a 13mm driver. So it's got a lot more surface area, so no, it's got more bass than the Cencibel. Some similarities, yeah, and then it's just the energy of the Cencibel that then gives it more liveliness compared to the Topaz. But the Topaz is one of my favorite IEMs at this price range. And let me see. Oh, and finally the 7 Hz. Yes, I was forgetting the 7 Hz. That's important as well. And here is the 7 Hz. And straight away you can see that yes, in terms of the bass department, no comparison possible. In terms of the mids, they are very similar, and that's the reason why I said that maybe in terms of ultimate detail retrieval they are probably equal. It's just that the fact that you, by having all this bass on the one and not having any bass by comparison on the other, you notice more that cleanliness of the sound. But the difference, honestly, when you actually are listening to the Cencibel, is not as significant as what the graph would perhaps show you. Anyway, guys, that's the graph section for you. As I mentioned, I really hope that Linsol will maybe consider this little slight improvement that I've done, and if they do, I think they have a winner. I mean, the graph in front of you speaks for itself, and that's that. Anyway, guys, thank you. Take care. Bye bye.